Of course. So, with Labor Day this weekend, the summer's winding down, and what better way to commemorate the unofficial end of the summer than discussing the hits and misses of the season in the box office? What was the biggest box office hit this summer?
Paramount and Skydance's Top Gun Maverick was a massive overperformer. It earned approximately, and it's still going, so as of this recording, it's earned approximately $695 million in North America. It'll pass 700 million domestic either over Labor Day weekend or very soon after Labor Day weekend, at which point it will be past the unadjusted for inflation, I'll explain that in a second, domestic gross of Black Panther to become the fifth biggest film of all time in domestic grosses. By the way, and just because if you're going to be a regular watcher of this, this is a good thing to know. When I talk about adjusted for inflation, that means ticket prices tend to rise with inflation. So a ticket in 1986, when Top Gun first came out, is a lot cheaper than a ticket in 2022. Now, when you adjust its gross for inflation, it has still sold more tickets in North America. Once it gets past, I think, $701 million, it will have sold more tickets in North America than Black Panther, The Dark Knight, and Thunderball, which means basically Top Gun Maverick will be essentially the biggest grossing non-fantastical action movie of all time in domestic earnings. Even, in terms of just raw tickets sold, it's incredibly popular. It's made $1.4 billion worldwide, and it's still going strong.
Why was Top Gun so underestimated? I think you might have even underestimated its success too.
Yeah, I did not put it anywhere near the top of my, seasonal top 10 list.
Mhm.
Whoops. Um, Basically, for the last 15 years, Tom Cruise films that weren't Mission Impossible pictures, some of them are very good. Most of them are very good, if we're honest. Jack Reacher, Edge of Tomorrow, Oblivion. Mummy wasn't very good, but hey, nobody's perfect. Those films have had something of a ceiling in terms of over under 100 million domestic and over under 400 million worldwide. So the big question heading into the summer was, is Pete Maverick Mitchell, the protagonist of Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, is he as much of a marquee character as Ethan Hunt from the Mission Impossible films? And the answer was a resounding yes. The film is by far Tom Cruise's biggest domestic earner and biggest global earner of all time. It's not going to quite double Mission Impossible Fallout. That film did 792 million worldwide in the summer of 2018, but it's going to get close. And in raw, unadjusted domestic grosses, the previous high water mark was Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds, which made 235 million in the summer of 2005 in North American earnings and 600 worldwide, which prior to this was Tom Cruise's biggest non-Mission Impossible picture. As far as why, the reviews were very good. And not only were the reviews good, they emphasized a few things that are of commercial value. The film looks great in a theater.
Mhm.
It is fun. It is escapist. It is not going to make you feel terrible about the state of the world.
Important these days, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, that's
That's why people go to the movies.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
they're even films that tend to be about the issues of the day. There still needs to be some implicit, promise that you're not going to theater to have a bad time, because
Mhm.
you can do that at home. You can watch The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. Um, of one of many examples I can think of. And there clearly was an interest in the original Top Gun quote unquote franchise. We're talking about one film that made 176 million in North America in 1986 and about 350 worldwide in the summer of 86.
Yeah.
Adjusted for inflation, that was about, I think it was like, and I think 422 in North America alone. And I mean, obviously, Top Gun blew back past that like a couple months ago.
Mhm.
Um, so to a certain extent, the irony was that Top Gun was sort of pitched in the summer of 86 as sort of Star Wars set on Earth.
Okay,
It had lots of dogfighting and it's sort of a Luke Skywalker and an Han Solo in one single character.
sure.
Or if you want to be weird about it, you've got, the Han Solo character is the lead. The play it safe Luke Skywalker was Iceman, and then Kelly McGillis was sort of the Princess Leia, but
Mhm.
that's whatever. Um, And obviously, Top Gun Maverick, like a lot of legacy sequels that we've seen over the last several years, was taking from the Force Awakens playbook, in that it was a direct sequel 30 years later, starring the original cast, or those that chose to come back or were able to come back, with and they were sort of like mentor characters to a younger, more diverse crew of younger next generation heroes. Some of these films, like The Force Awakens, put the new characters in the spotlight. Some of them, like Terminator Dark Fate or the Matrix Resurrections, or I would argue Independence Day Resurgence, tend to let the franchise vets sort of hog the spotlight. I would argue Top Gun Maverick is one that let them hog the spotlight, which, to be honest, was a reason I wasn't huge on it when I first saw it. It was, what I like to call a good movie that doesn't work for me. And there's a difference between a Force Awakens, which I wasn't crazy about, but gets the job done, and Rise of Skywalker, which doesn't get the job done. But that's a different conversation. And the sort of the secret sauce of its success, in my opinion, it had good reviews. It had the promise of escapism. It had Tom Cruise as a definitive marquee character, which in this day and age, the biggest thing you can do to get butts in seats is have a marquee character that people want to see a movie about.
I want to touch on that. I want to touch on the Tom Cruise element of Top Gun. As you know, Tom Cruise has been facing controversy for the better part of 2 decades. Do you think that with his reprisal of the role of Maverick, he has completely rehabbed his image? Or do you think Top Gun's so iconic, people were going to see it regardless, and they were able to separate the artist from the art?
I think it's more the latter, frankly, in the same way that, Will Smith making Men in Black 3 and pushing it to $625 million in the summer of 2012 didn't magically stop After Earth from flopping in the summer of 2013. And, him making $1 billion, helping Aladdin make $1 billion, and, helping the Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad, make $745 million in the summer of 2016, that didn't help his non-franchise films like Concussion, Focus, Collateral Beauty, and King Richard become box office hits. Unfortunately, movie stardom as it exists is generally about marquee characters. Okay. There are exceptions: Leonardo DiCaprio, Sandra Bullock, Denzel Washington, and Gerard Butler in modestly budgeted action pictures. But generally speaking, Joaquin Phoenix can't open an envelope by himself. But you cast Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and you have $1 billion movie. Tom Holland, can't open an envelope as just Tom Holland, but you cast him as Spider-Man, and eventually that becomes a draw. Or, and this is sort of where you get to the newfangled stardom, you cast him as Nathan Drake in an Uncharted movie, but you basically make him Peter Parker with a gun. I don't know if you've seen Uncharted, but it's basically James Bond Jr. on a treasure hunt.
Is that with Mark Wahlberg?
Yes.
Yes.
And the film has been in development for so long that Mark Wahlberg was supposed to play Nathan Drake.
Yes. And then I know he was a little offended when he got cast as the older character after.
Which I understand his frustration, but I will say, to a certain extent, one reason that film overperformed is that it was a smart pairing of today's movie star with the previous generation's butts and seats draw. Because from around there was a period in the late 2000s, early 2010s where Mark Wahlberg was a butts and seats draw. A Lone Survivor, Contraband, Ted, The Other Guys, Daddy's Home, etc., etc. And the fact that he's not is more about the marketplace than anything he did or didn't do. Although, I'm inclined to think that Netflix's Me Time would have done halfway decent numbers had it been a theatrical release from like Sony or Paramount or whatever. But